Well, that's new. My
No.
brand new coffee maker, who I am making espresso with as we speak, just spit out about a third of a cup of pure water.
Yay! And that opens up our Polygon for tonight. Espresso machines leaking water. Good grief. So let me look to see my email with, because I may end up.
I apologize in advance to all the listeners. You're going to hear my coffee machine here for the next probably 5 minutes.
Okay, so we're brewing up coffee. That could be a new show we could do in the mornings.
I could run that all day and all night long. I am a coffee freak. Just ask my wife.
Yeah, we'll call it morning coffee, or whatnot, and
no, we could call it AM weather too.
AM weather again.
Remember that?
Yes, AM weather.
Yes.
I could email Joan Von On to be on. She was on Weatherbrains. In fact, who was the one that got Joan Von on Weatherbrains the first time? Yours truly. Because I was the one that said that they should get the people from AM Weather on, and they did.
I remember that episode very, very well.
And they've been on twice. So, but the first time they were still doing audio. The second time they went to video. It was video.
Right.
But anyway, enough about that, because we were talking about that. But we are waiting patiently for our guest that may or may not show up. We'll see. And if he doesn't show up, we may be doing another show tomorrow.
Which is totally good with me.
Yes, I'm sure I want to be doing 2 episodes a week. This is so nuts, but
I'm down for it. As long as it's the weekends, because pretty much my weeks are.
Yeah. If I have guests, I can do Friday night shows as long as I have somebody to talk to, but otherwise Saturday and Sundays will work.
Well, let me get to work on that a little bit. I think I could ramble up somebody. I have a bunch of ideas. Like I want to get Bill Murray on.
Well,
I love when he did his This Week in Weather History things. I love those things, and I would love to find out how he compiled all that stuff. I mean, usually, yeah, it's generally southeastern centric, but still.
Yeah, the one thing that I always have looked at is, of all the people, because this goes back, because we're nearing the 100th episode, which is coming up next month.
Yes.
But it could be earlier if we have to do multiple shows a week. But when I went back and looked at all the people that have been on, I looked back on it and was like in amazement as to say, why are these people been on the show? Because I've had on the show, I've had former Weather Channel people, multiples. I've had so many people on from because I had Eric Fisher on, who's who pretty much is like the weather person for CBS.
Right.
You watch CBS Evening News and they have weather people on. It's typically Eric Fisher.
Yep.
And he's been on this program. And I've had Span on. I need to get Span back on again because, unfortunately, that was the first show that I did with Henry back when I started this after the beta episodes from 2013.
Right.
And we had the accidental problem of the entire time the video was focused on Henry.
Whoops.
And not on Span. And I don't know why it did that, but it was the only episode that happened was episode 3, which irritated me to all heck. But outside of that, we've had people in their cars, we've had people at home, we've had people at work, we've had people from other countries, even in the middle of the night. And the thing that just impresses me more, and this is something I might have to get a hold of Nick Miller at the BBC because of the Met Office, because they lost their contract with the BBC.
Right.
Well, it was announced this week, because we might as well do news while we're at it, that the Met Office in the UK is going on strike, supposedly.
They're unionized. They're unionized kind of like we are, correct?
The Weather Service has a union, but I don't think
it's a per se type thing, isn't it?
It's per se, but they can't just say, "Oh, we're not going to work today." The UK Met Office is, I think, similar because you're still going to get like the forecasts and whatnot, but a lot of the stuff that the UK Met Office does for anybody else may not be done. Something similar to that. So I don't know what's going on with that. I might get a hold of Nick Miller.
I think what the union is, I think it's just like pretty much any government employee. They're treated like a union member, but they're considered as essential personnel because
they would work under like I would call like something similar to the government, a continuing resolution. Yes. Meaning they're under their old contract until a new binding contract is done.
Which may never happen because they're treated, in that respect, they're treated just like the military. They're treated as essential personnel, which means they get first dibs on, I hate to put it like this, but they get first dibs on protection should the world end. I mean, I'm sure that's not physically in their contract. That's probably not a thing, but, that's kind of how you would think of it. They get protected.
Yeah.
Just like the military gets protected.
And, of course, we don't know how it's based in the UK because it's a different government system and whatnot. The problem has been that, at least in this country, the Weather Service is understaffed, or in some cases poorly staffed, whereas the Met Office, I think they have very good people there. And I think the problem that they've run into is when they lost the BBC contract, that was a lot of their budget that came from the BBC that they're not getting anymore.
Right.
But the BBC is not like a CBS or an NBC. The BBC is similar to PBS. It's not commercial.
Oh, it's public. It's public access.
It's pretty much like public broadcasting. It's no commercials. So it's not like the other stations in the UK, like Channel 4 or ITV or Sky. They don't do commercials because it's not in the basis of what the BBC was when it started way back in the 1920s as radio.
That's not part of their revenue management system.
No. So the Met Office, I think, I would take a guess it's something similar to when they lost all this money that they had for the budget and they weren't getting anything from Parliament. So something like that. I don't know at all. I would need to get a hold of Nick Miller, who's been on the show before. I might not have him on. I might just ask questions and then I'd answer them on a show. But that's something that needs to that was of interest this week of excitement going on in the UK. The other thing that's big weather-wise was Tropical Cyclone Winston that hit Fiji yesterday, last night, and into today.
Yes.
And that was what I would consider it already broke the record for strongest storm in the southern hemisphere at 165, I think it was. And
I was about to ask, is that record in terms of central pressure or wind speed?
I think both. I think both for the southern hemisphere.
Wow.
But in the southern hemisphere, it's very hard to get storms to get that strong for some reason. But that storm, if you look at the tracking map of Winston down there, it's going all over the place. It couldn't decide which direction it wanted to go. It's right now moving west, and it's expected to then recurve to the southeast and away.
Oh wow!
But it's done looped. It's doing it. It went south of Fiji and then turned and went west. It went south of Fiji like 5 days ago, and then it weakened. I think it had weakened all the way down to almost a depression and strengthened back to a Category 5 storm. And it's expected to keep going west and then recurve to the southeast. But it's already tried to recurve to the southeast once, and then it recurved back to the northeast and then turned west again. Because remember, and this is in the southern hemisphere, for those that wouldn't know, the storms are rotating the other way. So instead of, whereas in the northern hemisphere, if a storm recurves to the northeast, in the southern hemisphere they recurve to the southeast, toward the south pole. So they recurve to the southeast instead of the northeast. Whereas this one went southeast, then northeast, then west, and now it's going to track supposedly back toward the southeast again. It's doing loop-de-loops and whatnot. And then I saw, I think it was earlier today, that I saw it was going to go southeast, and then it was going to turn west again and weaken. By then it'd be down to a tropical storm. I'm like, yeah, we'll see. It's done all these other loop-de-loops. But I've seen a couple of pictures from Fiji on Twitter, on my Twitter feed.
Right.
It's not what I would call horrible, because like 10 buildings have been flattened and destroyed. I'm thinking a tropical storm could easily do that, or even a weak hurricane, or a cyclone, because this is southern hemisphere, so it's not a hurricane, it's a cyclone.
Right.
But it's not what I would call horrible, but I haven't seen a lot of pictures. Now, there's a lot of places that look, there's a lot of power lines down, roofs off, but I'm sure we'll know more probably in the next day or two.
As more detailed reports come in, I would assume, because that's a third world nation, and reports,
it's more or less tourist.
Coming
it's
out
touristy.
Pretty
that's the only thing Fiji has is tourism, more or less.
Yep.
And the storm is already away from there. It's moved west of the island, so they're still getting the outer edges of it, but the weather there is improving, because it's right now, as we do this on a Saturday evening, it's now Sunday the 21st there now, about midday, maybe a midday, early afternoon there. There are not that many hours behind us. I think it's like close to midday, maybe late morning, midday, around then. So we'll probably there'll be a lot more pictures now between now and in the next couple of hours, since it's daytime now. So we'll get more as time goes along. But that's been the big story. I saw so many weather people talking about it, because they compared it, because it had the stadium effect, the buzzsaw effect.
Yep.
And it weakened a little bit. It didn't have that crisp buzzsaw appearance over the last few hours. It kind of, I think, got disturbed a little bit when it went over Fiji, the northern part of Fiji, but it's not expected to stay Category 5. It's still Category 5, I think it was. It's expected to weaken to a 4 sometime tomorrow.
But correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't this, I know that the Southern Hemisphere Category 5 storms are pretty rare in and of themselves, but even in this time of year, given that in the Southern Hemisphere it is summer there, late summer.
Yeah.
It is still pretty rare for having this kind of a storm out there this time of year.
Well,
that just makes me wonder just what kind of teleconnection that's going to have for us, given that we are transitioning out of an El Nino phase and into a La Nina phase. And the last time that happened, we had a really active hurricane season. And which begs the question, are we going to break the 10-year streak of no landfalling hurricanes in the mainland U.S.?
Well, the thing it's not unheard of, because when Winston developed way back over a week ago, there was another tropical system in the area. So there were tropical systems down there, but them getting this strong is very odd, at least to say the least. I'm going to try to bring up a satellite image. So well,
it's rare for tropical cyclones to get this strong, period, no matter where they're at in the world. But I'm a spring chicken, so correct me if I'm wrong, but it's even more rare to A, get them this strong in the Southern Hemisphere, and B, get them this strong, period, anywhere in the world this time of year.
Well, this time of the year, because a lot of the Southern Hemisphere storms this time of the year, Because, for example, I have my satellite up, I hope. So it should be. This is the Himawari satellite picture. There's lovely Australia. And here's Winston over here. This little over here. And you notice, you look at it, it's not big. It's not a big storm. And I've noticed most southern hemisphere storms tend to be fairly small. You're not going to get these Katrina-sized storms that are like the size of the Gulf of Mexico.
Right.
You very rarely get them in the southern hemisphere. You'll get, most of them are about this size. Fairly small, fairly compact. Because, I mean, you look, here's the eye, if I'm pointing at it. And already look, there's Fiji. That's this island right here, the main island of Fiji. And you notice the storm is already way west. And you could pretty much, if you were there, as you can tell, this is the daytime, so the sun's out. It's probably the sun's starting to peek out already.
Yep.
The storm was really nasty there maybe 12, 18 hours ago. So, I mean, look at these islands over here. Nothing there yet. It's in between the two. So, but when you look at it, comparatively speaking, there's some activity up here, but it looks very unorganized. But you look at this, anything, you can even get storms in the northern hemisphere this time of the year, because we've already had the one south of Hawaii back to the early part of January.
Yes, I remember that.
But those, they tend to be, this time of the year in the Pacific, they tend to be very small, and they typically are weak. And typically this time of the year, if you get a northern hemisphere storm, they typically will hit the Philippines, kind of the southern half of the Philippines, and maybe, let's say, Vietnam. You're not going to get these storms that are going to curve up and hit Japan, because the westerlies are so strong, it'll get ripped up before it even gets there. It may get windy, but it's not going to be a big storm, because then you see this big storm up here in Japan, and it goes all the way down to the Philippines. So you're not going to get anything developing when the westerlies are so strong. Whereas down here in the southern hemisphere, here's Winston right here. There's the intertropical convergence zone right about here. There's nothing ripping it apart. You got a frontal system right here going through New Zealand. And that's, I think, this is the frontal system right here that's going to start to pull it to the southeast, because this system is too far to the west. There's one over
Australia.
Western Australia, moving into, me and my...
The outback.
Well, it's in that area, but I'm trying to think of the territories, because Western Australia is here, the Northern Territory, this part, which is South Australia, is down here, and that's going to be moving this further to the east and southeast. So, but this Winston's going to go like this, and then it's going to curve like that. And then I think when I saw the tracking map of it going southeast and it may go west, is that it's going to get pulled by this frontal system that you kind of see right here, this little thing right here. I think it's going to leave it behind. And then what it's going to do is it's going to start drifting west again. But by then, I think it's going to just get so ripped up. That's why they say they're thinking it's going to weaken.
You're saying that the outflow from Winston will push that frontal system west, or
no? The Winston is moving west now, but what's going to happen is this frontal system down here is going to move it to the southeast, but the frontal system is going to leave it behind, because the frontal system is going to move too fast, and it's going to leave it behind, and that's why some of the tracking models indicate that it's going to go down, and then it's going to start drifting west again, because the steering currents, it's going to get left behind, and there's nothing to continue to steer it to the southeast, because after this here, it's this one down way back here.
I got you.
So that's what's probably going to happen with that. So with that, I'm like, we're doing tropical weather. It's February, but outside of that happening in the South Pacific, I feel like I need to start doing Rogers and Hammerstein. But here we had our own tropical system, it seemed like, yesterday. Was it yesterday where it was windy?
Yesterday, definitely.
Yeah, Friday, windy. Yes, because, oh gosh, yeah, Friday. Because we talked about this before we started we came on air, because I'm going to describe what I did yesterday. I went to my mom's house, and then we went out here to Walmart in Anamosa, which is on top of a hill. And it faces to the northwest. So, and the wind was west all day. We went in there, and this was at about 12:30, and we came out about 1:15, and this is when the wind was the strongest, because it had gotten much stronger. Supposedly, I'm not sure what it was, one of the cart racks actually got picked up at a Walmart, and perhaps, supposedly, hit a car.
Really?
Or something. And somebody had to go out there and drag it to the building, because all I kept hearing because I saw a bunch of people in the Walmart running around saying that there was problems or something. So I'm thinking something was going on there. So then I drove, because I had bought groceries. So then I drove back to my apartment here, and that's when I saw that there was roof shingles being ripped off of this building down here they're building. Because and you would know this being somewhat you're in concrete, but it's construction, that if you do roofing in cold weather, it doesn't adhere very well. And what happened? They did this roofing in the winter. It didn't adhere well. Here comes a 50 to 60 mile an hour wind. There goes the shingles.
Yep.
So that building lost half of its shingles. There was another building where you had the roofing was flapping up and down. There was this house over here right next to me. It lost part of its shingles on its garage. I'm lucky enough I have a metal roof. I already had roof damage this year when we had snow that came off the roof, and it just decided to smash through the metal braces and just rip the braces off, which that happened earlier a couple weeks ago. But I mean, and the thing I worried about, because I then drove after I dropped my groceries off and put them away, and then I drove back to my mother's house, that I had to think, okay, if it's doing it on that roof, is it doing it on anybody else's roof? So I had to check my mom's roof again to make sure it wasn't starting to peel off the shingles. It wasn't, at least not that I know of. There was lots of tree damage. I saw several reports of semis being blown over. I know they called the fire department here for a semi that got blown over.
Yes.
There were semis just going all over the place. I took my Kestrel, because I have a Kestrel here, and those things, you never can get good wind gusts on them, even because you're in too much of a protected area.
Right.
So I took it out. This was when I was going to my mom's house when I left here to begin the day. I never can get any wind on that. Even if we have a 30 mile an hour wind, I might get like 10. I took my Kestrel out and I went outside. This was at about noon or 11:30 in the morning. I took my Kestrel out and went out to my truck and got out of my parking lot. I got a wind gust to 20 on my Kestrel. So I can easily say that was probably over 40 to 45. And I had a sustained wind at 13, which means it was probably 25, roughly.
Yep.
Because it was somewhat protected, kind of, sort of. But the strongest wind was after I'd gotten back to my mom's house after we'd been at Walmart. I saw trees going sideways, kind of big, huge limbs going up and down and kind of going left to right. Supposedly, I think winds here gusted over 60. I know Cedar Rapids gusted to 60. I think Iowa City was 63. Davenport was 62. And then what was funny, that during the day, because it was cloudy and it cleared really quick. In the early afternoon, it cleared so quickly. It went from cloudy to bright sunny so quick within like an hour and a half. But northern Iowa had these little showers. Far northern Iowa, southern Minnesota. And I was thinking, if there was one bolt of lightning in that shower, they could have issued a severe thunderstorm warning and it would have been verified, because it would have had wind. Because you would have had severe thunderstorm, at least one or two severe thunderstorm warnings, even if you had just a little shower, If it had a bolt of lightning or a few bolts and thunder, you would have had to issue a severe thunderstorm warning because it would have gotten the criteria. But it didn't happen. We just had high wind warning instead, which is just as good. So then you had a little incident that we discussed before we taped. So you can describe what happened to you in the big windstorm of 2016.
Well, I think I might have sustained the first non-thunderstorm wind-related injury of 2016 here in eastern Iowa. As everybody knows that watches or listens regularly, I do concrete construction, and I was outside working doing the Hy-Vee gas station thing, and we were picking up concrete blankets. And during one particularly large wind gust, I was in the middle of picking one up, and one of my coworkers was on the other end, and we just happened to be facing north-south, so the blanket itself was perfectly positioned for to get picked up in the wind, and it picked it up in the gust, and I think I sprained my left wrist pretty good because now it's pretty dang sore.
Yeah.
Because I had a hold of it with my right hand, and as soon as the wind hit it, I knew it was gonna go.
Yeah.
And I didn't want it to go because had either one of us let it go, there was no way that one of us was gonna hold this thing in place or even still. It was gonna act like a parachute and just go sailing wherever the wind took it. And there wasn't, and there's a lot of construction equipment behind where we were working, and they're pretty light. They're pretty flimsy. But we had already lost a windshield on one of our machines, so I didn't want to take any risks. So I took my left hand and I grabbed a hold of it and I tried to swing my entire body around just to kind of give the blanket a bit of an anchor point to keep it from blowing away. And right as I was turning, I felt a little bitty pop in my left wrist, and I think that's what happened. I think that's what made it happen because it's quite sore now.
Yeah. I had a little incident with a parachuting type thing in another windstorm when I moved to my apartment that I live here in. It was back in, I think it was 2010, in the end of October. There was this humongous windstorm here where it was similar to what we had yesterday.
Okay.
And because I think you were stationed overseas in 2010, late 2010.
Yep.
And we had a windstorm that was similar to this in the end of October. And I'm moving into this apartment building here. I happen to be carrying a twin mattress into my apartment from the parking lot. And the wind is sustained at like 30, gusting to 50. And that mattress decided it wanted to go wherever it wanted to go, and it was going to take me wherever it wanted to go. I was blowing around with a mattress that probably weighed 40 pounds. 30. Okay, we got an update or something. But
sorry, that was me plugging in my phone.
It did this. I didn't hurt my wrist, but it did the parachute type thing, and that was a mattress. We're not talking like blankets and the blanket you were talking about was it wasn't no 5x5 blanket. It was, I think you said, I'd say what, 40 by 20?
Yeah, that blanket itself was roughly 40 feet long and 20-ish feet wide. It was pretty big, and they're not like blankets like you use on a bed. These are multi-layered. At first, when you first look at them, they look like tarps, but they have layers of foam insulation inside them to trap as much heat in there as possible.
Yeah, to keep the concrete from getting cold and then cracking.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And because of all those layers of insulation inside, they're pretty hefty. They have, some decent weight to them. If I had to guess, they probably each blanket weighs anywhere from 20 to 40 pounds, depending on what size you have. And you get one of those in a nice wind gust. And I think that wind gust that got me with my wrist was probably the wind gust that the Iowa City ASOS got at 62 or 63, because not only did it hurt my wrist, but there were some bricklayers laying bricks for the walls of a car wash for that gas station. And in order for them to be able to work safely, they had really large sheets of plastic surrounding their scaffolding.
Yeah.
And all that got ripped to shreds, just ripped to shreds. And that was quite interesting to see in and of itself, because we went from just hearing it blow in the wind to all of a sudden hearing the plastic sheeting snap, and then watching about a 40-foot long section of it blow right over our heads.
Yeah, it gets to the point that doing construction work on Friday around here was probably not a good idea, given the fact it was so windy. That even when it's windy like it was yesterday, there's so many people that don't take just wind seriously, that it could really do a lot of damage. Just strong wind, not severe weather. It was just wind.
Mm-hmm.
And it can rip stuff. It could injure people. You could have semis blowing over that could kill people in some cases. So
Yep.
it was not as bad as it could have been, and it didn't last as long as it, because the high wind warning got canceled early, and then the wind advisory got canceled because it was strong at 1 o'clock. But when you look at what the wind was at sundown, when the sun set just before 5:36, the wind was way less.
Oh yeah.
Probably down to 15, 20, maybe gusting to 30, if that. And
Mm-hmm.
by late evening, the wind was like a breeze. So that wind didn't last very long. But
No,
boy,
it didn't.
I was seeing wind reports all night last night into New York State, where the winds started blowing near Cleveland up to Erie and Buffalo, where the winds were blowing 40, 50 miles per hour. And it was the same storm.
Mm-hmm.
So this storm caused a lot of problem, but it was just wind. But that storm, they could have called it a cyclone. They could have named it, and it would have done as much damage as any snowstorm has done. Because all you would have had to do is look at all the pictures from Chicago, and Chicago had wind gusts to 70.
Yep.
And
I remember seeing that.
And there were construction going on downtown Chicago. Talk about something that could be dangerous. You're talking about windows breaking and falling hundreds of feet down onto people below, cranes that could fall on people. We already had that during Sandy, where a crane in New York City almost fell during Sandy a couple years ago.
Yep.
I mean, you're taking real risks in windy weather with, especially in high rises, that stuff could fall on people.
But when you have cranes and stuff like that, when you're dealing with machinery that goes up 100 plus feet in the air, there's actually OSHA rulings, and anytime you're on a job site that requires cranes, you're going to have the attention of OSHA. If you're up in the air with a crane or a boom lift or anything like that, I forget what the threshold is, but if it's a really, really windy day, you're not going up in the air. Like,
yeah, I don't think they were even actually working. I just think the crane was just there. I think they weren't even working.
But they'll even I know when I worked for another company here in Cedar Rapids, we had quite a few cranes at our plant, and anytime there was a big forecast for wind, they would actually get in contact with the National Weather Service, and they would coordinate with them to figure out, okay, what precise direction is the wind going to be coming from, how strong, and for how long. And they'll actually lower the cranes down to a safe elevation, I guess you could say, and then point them in away from the wind.
Yeah.
So they have much less aptitude to be blown over.
Yeah. So besides the wind, which was the main story, it was warm. So all our snow is mostly gone now. So
thank the good Lord.
Yeah, goodbye snow. It might snow again later. I saw that there might be snow tomorrow morning.
I hope not.
There might be a little bit. I saw that from WHO, and I'm thinking, no, please, I don't want. We finally got rid of the snow. Now we have to get more. No way.
No, thank you.
But yeah, today was nice because it was sunny. It was warm. Not as warm as yesterday, although anything was warmer than yesterday because on Friday with it so windy. Yeah, 50 degrees, but the wind blowing 40 miles an hour. It wasn't a nice day. Today it was about 50, 52, 53. I had my windows open in my apartment, and it was a lot nicer.
Oh, yeah, today was beautiful. Today was the first time since the fall construction season started where I went out to work, because I worked for a couple hours this morning, where I went to work in nothing but a hoodie.
Yeah.
And it was amazing. And granted, this is at 7 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah. It wasn't cold last night, so.
No, it was nice.
Yeah.
Great day today.
Yeah, we don't get that nice warm weather.
Without wind.
Yeah.
Not around here.
Unfortunately, but yeah, when we look at what's going to happen next week, though, it ain't going to be as warm. You can't get 50s and 60s all the time in February.
Not without seeing the other side of the shoe.
But I did notice this because I've talked about this too. There is going to be a storm system in the middle of next week that'll not probably affect us. It'll be just to our east. They're talking about rain, snow, and severe weather. So there could be some activity that we might have to talk about next week, which of course we won't be because we have a guest next week. But because I don't think our guest wants to talk about that. But anyway, outside of the warm weather, the snowpack going away, we talked about Winston, the UK Met Office issue. I don't know if anything else right off the bat, because I'm going to see if our guest actually thought he was going to come at 7 o'clock my time instead of 7 o'clock his time. So I'm going to wait until we get to that point, and then we will see. Otherwise, then we'll stop. But
that is quite okay.
Yeah, but other than that, not much else going on. I did see. I come up with stuff when I'm trying to come up with stuff. I saw on Twitter a thing came from Climate Central because we had Sean Sublette on a couple weeks ago.
Great guest. I like that guy.
Yeah, whatever. Okay. So,
sorry.
Yeah, but there was this thing that came from Climate Central that I saw on Twitter, and it was today. It was a few hours ago. It said that winters in the upper Midwest are getting warmer. But in other parts of the country, it's just slightly getting warmer. So then this brought me I thought about that. I'm thinking, well, we've had a lot of cold winters of late. So that made me a bit suspicious. But when we've had warm winters, they've been very warm. Example, the drought year, 2011, 2012, right before the drought year, 2012, was a really warm winter. But then in between those, we had cold winters. So I'm thinking what's happening is that what they're saying is it's warming in the winter is when we get a warm winter, it's excruciatingly warm. Otherwise, we have a normal to slightly colder winter. But you go way back into the 90s when we had that big, horrible freeze or big sub-zero temperatures in 96 in February.
I remember that well.
Yeah. And when a bunch of states broke their all-time record lows.
Yep. The
interesting thing about it is, going back to that, is that the city of Cedar Rapids, they broke their all-time record low ever. They did not break that in 96. They broke that, I think it was in 2009 or 10, when it went to 28 below zero in Cedar Rapids, which was the record lowest ever. It was in January. It was a couple years ago. I'm thinking 09 or 2010. I can't remember. But
wow.
And I'm thinking, well, we still get cold weather because remember, Sean said, if we get warmer weather in the winter, it does not mean there won't be snow. There will be snow. It may just be shorter and not as long in the winter. Because I've noticed we've lost our snowpack. We have lost our snowpack. I could go way back to when I was in school. And we always seemingly lose our snowpack in February. Because we always seemingly every February have a couple of days where it's like this. The last couple of days where it's in the 50s, 60s, the snow melts, and it's nice. And then we typically have that every February. I always call it the February thaw. We always get it. Now, last winter, I don't think we did. Last winter, because they did a thing today where it said a year ago today, the high was 7. Yeah, I think I'll take the 50 it was today.
Well, yeah, but last winter was also pretty brutally cold not for the whole winter, but if memory serves me, last winter we had a lot of really intense but really short cold snaps. Like we get a clipper or something, or God forbid I say I drop the name the polar vortex. We get
were
those coming through.
We were last winter. I called it like the clipper winter. It was like everything was a clipper, and every clipper was not the same because every clipper was like supercharged with something because it wouldn't dump 1 to 3 inches. It would dump like 5, 6.
Mm-hmm.
But what we had last winter, I'm trying to think if it was last winter or the winter before that. It might have been both, where we'd have one storm and then we'd have to get rid of all the snow before the next storm came. And that happened at least 4 or 5 times before we finally got a snowpack going.
Yeah.
And most people, or at least some people, because there's a bunch of people around here that would always complain, I want to go snowmobiling and all this stuff because you need snowpack. And I've noticed, and this is probably one thing I've noticed where I think it is getting kind of interesting that it might be getting warmer, is that for you to get a snowpack to go snowmobiling, you can't get an inch of snow and go snowmobiling.
Absolutely not.
No. You need at least 3-4 inches before you can go. So before you start wrecking dirt and grass and making a mess.
A lot of people would argue a lot more, like 6, 7.
Yeah. Well, look at this winter we've had. We had a snowstorm in November. That snow lasted a week in November?
Ish.
And then come right before Christmas, we're having tornadoes and 60 degrees. You're like Christmas time. You're supposed to be dreaming of a white Christmas, not dreaming of tornadoes. But nobody was going snowmobiling at Christmas time because it was too warm. We didn't really get a sustained snowpack until New Year's. And then we pretty much have had the snowpack until recently. We've lost it here now. Southern Iowa's had almost no snow for at least a week and a half. Northern Iowa's, in fact, far northern Iowa still has snow. But
they do.
Here we don't anymore. There's snow around, but it's not a snowpack because you can see a lot of grass and dirt now. But when the time ends when you lose the sustained snowpack, meaning the snow that lasts a long time, I think that time is shrinking, but it's variable. We could go next winter, we could get a big snowstorm on the 15th of November, and we could have snow all the way till March. It's just variable. And just this year just happens to be a year where we only had a sustained snowpack for
a month, maybe.
Well, I think it was more than a month, maybe 6 weeks at best. Parts of the state had it maybe 4 weeks, 4 to 5, because we had a lot of rain this year. Because we had the gloppy mess, ice.
That was sleet storm.
Yeah, that was the stuff that melted now. And there was a little bit of snow still left before that glop fell. But if we had not had the glop about a week and a half ago, we would have had no snow for the last week and a half. But we still had some, but not much.
That makes sense because I've only been out for snow removal for my job only 5 times this entire winter.
Yeah.
And one of those was the sleet storm. The other ones were fairly minor things, just an inch or 2, 3. We go out, we'd hit it with some salt, and be done with it.
Yeah.
Usually that still meant a 10-hour day for us. That's just kind of how we worked. But yeah, we've only had 5 snow removal, excuse me, 5 snow removal worthy events so far this winter, if my memory serves me.
And one of them was November.
Yep.
And so, I mean, I think we're below average for snow. However, with precipitation, we're, I think, near normal because we've had a lot more rain this year.
Yep.
I mean, heck, what was it? The other day, it was like a week and a half ago when we had the glop. Yeah, it was the same storm system. We had thunderstorms. I'm thinking, okay. I mean, you could get thunder snow. I mean, everybody says it's rare, but I keep hearing that thing. Thunder snow is rare. Well, not here. We get it at least once a year. Sometimes not, but at least once a year on average.
I think it's a personal experience thing. Because me personally, I would call thunder snow rare. I really would.
Well, I say it's rare, but they make it sound like it never happens in like a generational rare. There's a difference between generational rare and rare as in it happens once a year instead of once every 50 years.
Yeah.
We're not talking like, let's say, like a generational tornado outbreak and something that happens once a year like Christmas Day.
Yeah.
But yeah, rare as in once a year compared to rare as in once every 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 years. I mean, I've seen thunder snow several times. And each time it was during a really bad snowstorm. It makes it sound like, too, that they say blizzards are rare. Well, unless you live in the upper Midwest, if you don't live in the upper Midwest, they're not rare in the upper Midwest or even in New England.
That's why I would say that I think that thunder snow is rare, because you've seen thunder snow quite a few times. I've only seen thunder snow maybe 3 times in my entire life. Not since I've been, have a vested personal interest in weather, but just in general, in my entire life, I may have had a 4th one that I don't remember. But as far as what I can recall, I've only seen thunder snow 3 times in my entire life. So I would call that pretty rare.
Yeah. I've seen it maybe 5, 6, 7. I mean, and I would even count, if you want to say stuff that's even rare, having thunderstorms, not thunder snow, thunderstorms in winter is rare too. And how many thunderstorms have I seen in the 3 months that are constituted as meteorological winter, December, January, February? I've had, December 23rd, that day, I think I had like 3 in one day.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had the one a couple weeks ago. So I've had 4. 4 thunderstorms in winter in Iowa. That's rare to have that many. Now, we've had thunderstorms before in the winter. Thunderstorms when it rains or even if it's sleet. But thunderstorms where it's raining and have 4 of them and 3 in one day is very rare. To have that
is true.
To have one in a winter of 90-some days, 3 in one day, 4 total.
That's noteworthy.
Start getting into something's going on. And given the fact that currently there's thunderstorms in Missouri, yeah, they get thunderstorms there more often than we would because they're further south. But when they're talking about thunderstorms that could dump hail, well, this time of the year, hail would be the #1 severe weather factor up here because it's so cold.
Yep.
It's not going to take very far up into the atmosphere before you get to freezing.
Yep. Very true.
So that's why you get some thunderstorms this time of the year. If you get thunderstorms, you'll get graupel falling because it's not hail. It's just the soft hail, the graupel. Because that's all, and in some cases, that's all it falls is graupel. It doesn't even rain. It just drops graupel everywhere. An alert has been done.
I need to take my dog outside here in a second. I remember. I wish I could bring up my Facebook. I'm doing this on my phone. I shared 2 years ago today. I shared a picture of the weather app on my iPhone.
Yeah.
It showed a thunderstorm. It showed a thunderstorm going on, and the temperature was like 34 degrees. Excuse me.
Well, yeah, we've had it's just and this goes back to the thing when we talked about with winters getting warmer. And the thing I saw, this was several months ago, where it said the upper Midwest was one of the few places where it wasn't warming as quick. And I think that's mainly for the fact that when you think about it, outside of 2012, the drought year,
Mm-hmm.
summers in this area are not warming up. They might be cooling down slightly.
Right.
Because and outside of 2012, which I consider an anomaly, it seems like of late, and this is just like some crazy weird anomaly too, there are fewer days in the 90s than there used to be. There used to be way more, and now there's less.
Well, this last summer, wasn't there only 3 days that broke 90 degrees?
Something like that. I only remember one summer. This was not last summer. It's a few summers before that, maybe before 2012, where the warmest it got to in Cedar Rapids, I know, was only 91. And I know the average high temperature, the highest I think it gets is 86.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're only getting to 91 in the summer, that starts to get a bit as to thinking, yeah, our winters are getting warmer, but our summers really not getting any warmer. Are they kind of leveling off or getting slightly cooler? I don't think anybody would complain if it was actually slightly cooler in the summer and take a warmer winter. They'd be like, yay, our heating bills will be cheaper and our air conditioning will be cheaper. I think everybody would be happy with that, but I don't think we want to have the climate being that completely nuts, because we're used to, in Iowa, in the Midwest, having cold winters and warm to hot summers. But if we now switch it to having warm winters and semi-warm summers, it's going to be a complete difference as to stuff will still grow. You can still grow corn, soybeans, and all that stuff, but like Sean mentioned on our show a couple weeks ago, the growing season may lengthen out a little bit. We still may get snow, we'll get rain, but as long as it's kept, if they can keep stuff,
True.
Try to get stuff where we can get it taken care of without killing off the economy and whatnot, because I think that is the thing that always is like the non-starter for anybody, is if it means getting rid of stuff that we're too used to, it's a non-starter. You're not going to get it past anywhere.
That's true.
And we mentioned that because Americans are too stubborn.
We're afraid of change.
Well, I don't like change either, but I'm in my 30s, so I'm going to have to live with it for at least 40 years. I just don't want to end up having to get rid of vehicles and have to walk somewhere 30 miles to go to the store.
I don't think that'll ever happen.
Yeah. And many people think that that's what will happen.
But what I think will happen is, and this is just me thinking out loud, what I think will happen is that something will come of this, and I don't really know how to put it, but I'm going to say the climate change push. Something's going to come out of it where we're going to find some sort of technology that makes our vehicles really, really, really efficient. So our oil consumption's basically going to be zero, or it will be zero.
Yeah.
Whether it's electric or something else that comes down the line in the future.
Electric or hydrogen.
But we'll still be mobile. we'll still be able to get into some sort of land-based vessel and travel around at our own free will.
Yeah.
Because I don't care who you are and where you live in the world, human beings are addicted to their cars.
Yeah. And there's too many
people.
I
know this for a fact because I've been a car guy ever since I was a kid, just like I've been a weather nerd ever since I've been a kid. I am obsessed with my cars, and I will fight to keep them. to put it one way.
Yeah. And because people don't want to be restricted.
No.
They want to be able to move where they want, when they want. And I mean, for example, like you being a storm chaser, you want to go when there's storms, and you don't want to be like, well, I can't go today because I can't use oil today. And like, really, I mean, that's why there's ethanol. But
I don't think ethanol, and I used to work for an ethanol manufacturer. I think ethanol is a great idea, but as far as using it on a global scale for what the general consensus of the idea of
something,
what it's being used for now, I don't think it's as sustainable as people think.
No.
Just because the cost that goes into making it is so astronomically high, especially when crude oil is this low as it is right now.
Yeah. That doesn't mean stop making it and give the money to the Arabs, though. I'm glad we've turned this into a political show all of a sudden.
Hey, but like what I'm seeing is that the company that I used to work for, the plant that I specifically worked in, that company is already looking at options for more or less getting rid of it, either selling it completely, taking it apart and decommissioning it, which is on the table. That's one of the options on the table.
Yeah.
Or leasing out their technology so other companies can come in to use it to make other things.
Yeah.
Will that plant ever go away? I don't think so. I don't think it'll be torn down and completely decommissioned, because that's an almost $700 million investment. Nobody wants to see that go anywhere around here.
Yeah.
But what I think might happen is that equipment will be repurposed to make drinking alcohol, because there's very little changeover you have to make it food grade, to make the alcohol able to be consumed by humans.
Yeah.
Because everything there is already, I'd say about 98% of all the equipment there is already to USDA food grade standard, as far as the mechanics of everything. All the pipe work that the product touches, it's all very high grade stainless steel, extremely expensive material, which is the only thing the USDA accepts for process piping in food grade materials. So that much of an investment will not go away. It'll just be repurposed. What that is remains to be seen. But I don't really, to bring it back around, I really don't think ethanol is going to make the push that they wanted it to make 5 years ago.
That brings up a point that of something that I thought about before I started this the show today. I keep saying a podcast, and this is something I thought about, is taking the audio from this and making a podcast out of this, but I've not done it because that means more work. Because I thought about this before I brought this up, because I had seen Bill Northey tweet about bacon. Don't know why all of a sudden we've turned a weather show into bacon. But talking about Bill
Everybody loves bacon.
But about Bill Northey, who's, for those that may not know who the heck that is, it's the Iowa Secretary of Agriculture in Iowa. And I was thinking, well, agriculture and weather are connected. Because when you look at it, the state climatologist, Harry Hilliker, is through the agriculture department.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm thinking, because I tried to get him on, and that didn't work. But I thought, well, getting somebody on, an agriculture secretary, to talk about the weather and whatnot would make some sense. But I don't know how I would be able to make it a topic to be able to justify it being on a weather show when it's not talking too specifically about weather, but about agriculture.
Mm-hmm.
But then we started talking about ethanol and we started talking about drinking alcohol, and I'm thinking, okay, well, we've gone completely off base. But when you look at it in the span of weather, going back to weather, with ethanol, you would need a product, corn. Look what
Correct.
happened in 2012. We had a drought. Drought means no corn, meaning no product, meaning no ethanol. And that's why, as you would say, it isn't sustainable, because one drought year could kill off the industry, and it almost did in 2012. Because there was a lot of ethanol plants that did go under, or ones that they were going to build that they didn't because of the drought. So then you have to look at other sources like sugar or all this like waste, like corn husks, which you can use for like power. Because I think what's going to end up happening is you have all this waste from corn. When you harvest it, you have all this waste, like the
Yep.
corn cobs and all that stuff.
Yeah, they call it staves.
They're using that to power stuff. I know the University of Iowa is using that.
Yep.
That's, I think, where like sustained energy is going. Using stuff that is otherwise not going to be, that is not otherwise usable now, use that, and that is the future. Whereas corn, yes, it's good for the state of Iowa, but you get one drought year and it could kill off the industry, and then you have gas prices going through the roof, and it's not OPEC's fault, it's a drought. And you don't want to be kind of sustained into something that then you're tied into climate, and
Right.
then everybody is then freaking out that, oh my gosh, the climate's changing. Are we going to be able to grow corn? Is it going to be sustainable, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? So the thing is, it's not sustainable as such that there's enough product. It's whether there will be enough product year on year on year, depending on what the weather is doing. Because if you get a drought year, there's no corn, and you have to use the corn, because corn is not just going to be used for fuel. It has to be used to feed the animals and feed the humans, because I'm sorry, because there's canned corn, and it comes from somewhere, and it has to come from some farm. So eventually, it's not sustainable enough to the point that what are you going to have to use the corn for? I think there still will be ethanol. It still will be mixed, but I'm getting to the point that I don't think E85 is probably an answer. I know it's cheaper gas, but should we be using so much of it? Because the fact that if we were using all the corn for fuel and not for feeding animals and feeding humans, are we kind of starving ourselves by just keeping a low fuel cost and one that's going to help the state?
I'm not sure, but
I
when you
need to
talk
know
about
more.
ethanol being produced by corn waste products, there's actually a term for it. It's called cellulosic ethanol.
Cellulose. Yeah.
That's already been explored by the company that I work for, or that I used to work for. I apologize. That that is a thing, but the technology that's used mainly in enzymes, and I can kind of go down that rabbit hole a little bit. Anytime you make ethanol, you have to have, well, ethanol on an industrial scale. You have to have enzymes to help speed up the process, because you have to break down those those um, those long chain compounds into smaller chain compounds, which are your sucrose, which is sugar. You have to break those into smaller chains, into smaller atomic chains. And to make ethanol out of cellulose, which is the corn waste, you have to have your enzymes very, 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 very well engineered. It's nowhere near the attrition rate of using regular corn. because corn is made up of about 75% starch. Corn cellulose is roughly 20 to 25% starch. So your enzymes have to work much, much, much harder to extract every bit of that starch out of that cellulose. Where that fits in is that the technology to develop those enzymes has not really reached full maturity yet,
Yeah.
and therefore the cost to get those enzymes out is much, much higher. They exist, but they just haven't proliferated yet to the degree that is needed to bring the cost down to where it's profitable to make cellulosic ethanol on a very, very large scale. And I say very large scale because the ethanol plant that I worked at is the largest in the world. They're capable of cranking out roughly 450 million gallons of 200 proof ethanol per year at full production capacity. So give it maybe 5 years. I think cellulosic ethanol will be proliferated enough to where you'll see it sprout up more. But
Yeah.
where I think ethanol is going to survive is still with cars, with the competition from alternative fuel sources like electric, with
Electric
hydrogen.
hydrogen,
Yeah,
liquid nitrogen. Yeah.
with those quickly growing, internal combustion engines have to find a way to keep up. And what that is doing is forcing automobile manufacturers to create smaller engines with higher power outputs. And what that does on a mechanical scale, or in a mechanical sense, is that tightens up your tolerances. And what I mean by tolerances are like the gaps between the piston rings and the cylinder walls are getting smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller, because the tighter an engine fits together and the better it's assembled, the more efficient it runs.
Yeah.
And once you get to a certain limit, regular old 87 octane fuel doesn't cut it anymore.
Yeah.
It doesn't burn as efficiently. You need something that burns a lot quicker and a lot hotter
Yeah.
and a lot more clean, obviously a lot more cleanly, but also a lot more complete, if that makes any sense. You have to have more of that fuel burned per power stroke than ever before. Where ethanol comes into play is that it is an extremely high octane fuel. E85 has an octane rating of, I believe, 110. So it's an amazing racing fuel. In fact, the Iowa Corn Indy 250 that's held down the road in Newton, during that race, every car is powered by E85. It's part of the IndyCar rule of the IndyCar series rules. That race, every car, no matter what design, no matter what type, gets run with E85.
Of course, I have to interrupt with that because the interesting thing about that is the ethanol they're getting is not from the United States; it's from Brazil.
This is very true. But that's where I think ethanol will keep, I guess, some of its market share in the U.S. is because it is such a great high octane fuel. Its resistance to detonation, or knock as they call it, is astronomical. It burns very, very cleanly. It burns very hot, and um, it actually it actually serves as a cooling effect. It sounds a little bit counterintuitive, but because it burns so hot, it burns very quickly. So your combustion chamber temperatures and your exhaust gas temperatures are actually lower than with conventional, regular old 87 octane gasoline. Because when you burn regular gasoline, it doesn't really burn all the way all the time. So you get carbon deposits, and those carbon deposits on your intake valves and exhaust valves and on your spark plugs and on the walls of the combustion chamber actually act as an insulator, so they retain heat.
Yeah.
So your over time, your engine will run a little bit cooler with E85 or straight methanol than with regular gasoline. That might be what keeps ethanol in the game here in the U.S. for quite some time, in my opinion.
I'm glad we ended up talking about ethanol for like 20 minutes. And it all started with talking about what
Cold weather.
Oh, no, it all started with us talking about winters were getting warmer. And we started off on ethanol, and then I talked about Bill Northey. This would almost be stuff we need to talk with Bill Northey on, of talking about if the climate keeps changing, is corn going to end up becoming a problem with the ethanol industry in the state, and is something going to be done about it? That I need to send him a thing, but I'm afraid he'd probably tell me no. But
that's the worst thing that could happen, is he just says no.
And yeah, well, we'll see, because that might be something we're going to have to discuss, especially as we're about getting ready for the spring planting in like about 2 months.
Mm-hmm.
I'm hoping it's not going to be earlier than that, because if it's early, then that's a problem. As he opens the door.
Yep, sorry.
It made it sound like you were probably outside the whole time.
I was. I have to take advantage of it somehow. It's beautiful outside.
So while he was doing all that talking, he was outside because he's on his phone, wandering the streets with
more like wandering my deck, making sure my dog gets a little bit of exercise.
Okay, I thought you were like going up and down streets or something, and you were talking to yourself, and people would be looking at you funny.
That would be
that guy on. Do we need to call the police?
That would be something I would point and stare.
But so that's what that is with corn and ethanol and the climate and whatnot. Otherwise, I don't think we have anything else to discuss since our guest didn't show up, so I'm going to yell at him.
Uh-oh.
But
uh-oh.
Other than that, if I can get a hold of our guest that was supposed to be on, we may be doing another show tomorrow. Heaven forbid. Have another show where we could talk about ethanol for another hour and a half.
Yeah, right.
The ethanol show will be later, so except we already did it. But
next on Ethanol Brains.
Yes, we're going to talk about ethanol with our guest. And then we're going to talk about more ethanol with our Brazilian guest. And what's the difference between Brazilian ethanol and American ethanol? Well, Brazilian ethanol is made out of sugar.
So it's very pure.
It's sweeter.
Mm-hmm.
Get it?
Tastes better.
Sweet. Ha ha ha. Whatever. Okay. So anyway, if we have a show next week, if we have a show tomorrow, we pretty much know who it's going to be, we think. I'm not going to say who because we already know who it is between us two. But we hope it's who it is. But we know next week that show is going to be a Friday at after 7 o'clock. I do know that.
I will be here.
Because that for sure was going to be after 7 because he said it was going to be after 7. And that's Tim Smith at KRGV in Brownsville, Texas. So we're going to be at the at the bottom of Texas.
Right at the Rio Grande.
And I saw a tweet from him that they have all their newscasts. They actually have Spanish speakers actually translate everything they say to Spanish.
That is awesome.
And they have a lot of people doing it. So that might be something I'd have to ask him. But we'll probably talk about more tropical weather as well with him and whatnot, because he's been down there for quite a number of years down in Brownsville. We have another possible guest. I'm not going to say who. And we have some other people I've emailed. We'll see if they respond. If they don't, then they'll go in the lovely 200+ list of non-responsive people, because there's a lot of the non-responsive people. So other than that, we're getting prepared for our 100th show.
Woohoo!
You've not been on all 100, and neither have I. I've not even been on all of the 90. This is the 95th episode. I've not even been on all of them. I think of
But it's still 100. It's still a milestone.
All but I think 2 or 3. So we'll see what I'm going to do with that 100th episode. Right now, if I have to do an episode tomorrow, it's scheduled to be around the 18th of March. If I don't do a show tomorrow, it'll be on the 25th of March, roughly. Those are both Fridays, but it's depending on what's going to happen, because we could have guests. I might email 60,000 people. Matt may end up emailing people and whatnot, because Matt, you can be allowed to email people if you want to email people.
Yes, I will be more than happy to.
Good. Start emailing people.
Great.
If you want me to give you the list of all the people I've emailed, you're not going to like that.
That's okay.
Because I'll send you a link of the stuff. So
cool.
But anyway, now that
I really hope that the 100th episode happens on March 18th, because that's an important anniversary.
Well, yeah, March 18th would be Tri-State.
Exactly.
Except it would be the 91st anniversary.
Yes.
But yeah, we're because that'd be a Friday, so we're gonna look into that and try to figure it out. It'll also be March 18th would be roughly 2 years from when we restarted the show, because Span's episode was the 3rd week of March in 2014.
Woohoo!
So it'll be interesting for that. But anyway. So if anybody wants to get a hold of me, why would they? Because nobody else does. But anyway, you can get a hold of me on Twitter, IowaWX, where I put my new picture on there, because my new picture is on Twitter right now. It's because I was doing stuff with graphics, and I happened to bring up one of the pictures it's actually a video shot of one of the Oklahoma City episodes that I did. From the 11th floor of the Renaissance Hotel in downtown Oklahoma City. Visit now. Where I have a lovely view. It was one of the episodes where I actually got on the chair, had my laptop, pointed the camera outside, and had a lovely view of the Oklahoma State Capitol building.
Awesome.
So, and I was on the 11th floor. But anyway, and there were some people that I've emailed that didn't have as good of rooms. They were further down, so too bad for them. Anyway, so I mentioned my Twitter account, IowaWX. You can follow me there if you want to, and if you do, if it's somebody that I don't know who it is, then I might not follow you back. You can email me, iowawx@gmail.com. You can follow me on Facebook, but I don't know why, because I have my Facebook account, but it's pretty much all that's there is all my tweets that are sent straight to Facebook. So Matt, if you want to shell out where people can get a hold of you to ask about concrete blankets, sprained wrists, ethanol plants, and drinking alcohol,
and drag racing.
That's
pretty much all I know. Oh, and drumming, because I'm a drummer as well.
Yeah, he's a one-man band.
Yeah, I wish. I wish I were even half that good to be even called a one-man band.
Well, my brother-in-law is a guitarist, so and he's in a band, which he's now gonna have to quit. But anyway, we won't get into that on air. So,
you can find me on Facebook, Matt Schess, SCHIESS. I'm on Twitter @WXBoy, all one word. That's pretty much all I have for social media. My email, feel free to email me any questions or suggestions. How do I make myself better? Because I'm still the spring chicken at this. I'm always willing to learn. My email is matthew.schess@gmail.com.
And email him for any things on ethanol.
Ethanol, drumming, and drag racing.
All in one place.
Your one-stop shop.
So for everybody, Matt, me, myself, and I, everybody have a good weekend. And we'll see. We may even see you in 24 hours or less. Who the heck knows? So, bye for now.
Bye-bye.